Welcome to the Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today because we're going to embark on a really incredible journey. We so often take reading for granted, just kind of skimming over words on a page or a screen. But today, we're going to see how peeling back the microscopic layers of a text, literally down to a single punctuation mark, can completely change our understanding of the world. We'll explore how analyzing a classic American poem connects to the sheer grit it takes to learn, and ultimately, how we can use these skills to bridge massive cultural divides. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's a quick look at our journey for this explainer. We'll start with the mechanics of poetry, zoom in on the power of a comma, rethink a famous little horse, compare creative and interpretive writing, look at the grit of annotations, and finish up by crossing cultures. Section 1. The mechanics of poetry and the deceptive simplicity in Robert Frost's work. Take Robert Frost's 1923 classic, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Frost actually called this his best bid for remembrance. And on the surface, the plot is deceptively simple, right? A traveler pauses in the woods, they're mesmerized by the falling snow, but then they realize they have promises to keep and must move on. It's a beautiful, quiet scene, but the emotional depth hidden within the poem's structural mechanics is absolutely fascinating. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean by structural mechanics. Think about this intricately interlocked rhyme scheme. In the first stanza, it's A-A-B-A. Then that divergent third line, the B, becomes the organizing principle for the entire next stanza, B, B, C, B. It chains together all the way down. Critics have pointed out that this strict rhythm and repetitive rhyme actually mimic the hypnotic, lulling power of the falling snow in the dark forest. But at the exact same time, maintaining such strict syntactic control is the speaker's way of resisting that hypnotic spell. It's like a protective charm. And notice that final stanza, D, 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 D. The interlocking chain breaks. The spell is broken, and the speaker makes the firm decision to move on. Section 2. The power of a comma. Publication history and grammatical details. So, we've looked at the macro structure, the rhythm and the rhyme, but what happens when we zoom way, way in? Can a single tiny comma truly alter a literary masterpiece? Well, this brings us to a massive critical controversy surrounding line 13 of Frost's poem, and it really shows just how much weight a tiny punctuation mark can carry. Think about the profound difference that comma makes. Now, what's really interesting here is that when the poem was first published in the New Republic, it had no commas in this line. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep. Without the comma, dark and deep actually modify the word lovely. They describe exactly how the woods are lovely. It creates a very modern, almost eerie, emotional tone. But decades later, versions appeared with the Oxford comma. Lovely, dark, and deep. That single comma turns them into three separate, distinct adjectives. Critics argue Frost preferred the version without the commas because it inextricably links the darkness to the beauty, completely altering the emotional tone of that quiet moment in the snow. Section 3. Rethinking the little horse, moving from duty to companionship. These microscopic mechanical details, the rhymes, the commas, they are the fuel for much larger interpretations. And one of the most debated elements in the entire poem is the speaker's silent companion, his little horse. For a long time, critics read this poem very darkly. Back in 1958, a critic named John Ciardi famously argued that the deep, dark woods represented a death wish, this sort of Freudian desire for ultimate rest. Frost, however, was absolutely not having it. He actively resisted this hyper-symbolic, fatalistic interpretation, playfully noting he doesn't exactly lose sleep over what critics invent about him. But if it's not a death wish, why is the speaker stopped? And what is the horse actually doing when it gives its bells a shake? This brings us to a brilliant paradigm shift presented in recent research by Sumuli Sarkar. The traditional view always casts the horse as kind of a nag, a symbol of duty, rationality, and external social obligations snapping the speaker out of a trance. But Sarkar's analysis looks at the modernist emphasis on interiority. When the horse gives its harness bells a shake, it isn't some authoritative interruption. It's an empathetic act of shared awareness. The horse is a grounding companion in a deeply isolating landscape. It's a moment of cross-species mutual recognition that says, I am right here with you, rather than just, hey, get back to work. Section 4. Creative versus interpretive writing and constructing deep meanings. It is amazing how much meaning we can pull from a single image of a horse in the snow. But how do we actually construct these deep meanings ourselves? So, the crucial point is understanding the difference in purpose. According to the team at Taylor Studios, creative writing relies on imagination. It's designed to literally transport you away to another place in time.
Interpretive writing, on the other hand, means to open your eyes to the here and now. It's about enlightening the audience about the world right in front of them. But here is the secret. Both styles require the exact same intense focus on word choice, and both require keeping the audience's best interests in mind.
Whether you're doing creative or interpretive writing, you absolutely must answer this one question for your reader. So, what? Why does this matter? For example, if an interpretive planner is writing about a red-winged blackbird, they might need to write it at a 6th grade reading level while still appealing to an adult's senses. You have to take the specific details and tie them back to the big picture to make the writing actually matter to the person reading it. Let's move to section 5 and see how this builds into annotations, critical thinking, and the grit of analysis. Tackling difficult texts, unpacking commas, and constantly answering that "so what" question requires serious mental effort. It's like pushing a heavy boulder uphill. It perfectly visualizes this grit. It connects beautifully to Edgar Guest's poem, "It Couldn't Be Done," which is often used in classrooms to teach perseverance. The poem is about a man who, when told a task is impossible, just smiles, takes off his coat, starts singing, and tackles it anyway. Analyzing literature, really wrestling with a text to find its meaning, can feel like pushing a boulder. It takes that exact same resolve. And the research totally backs this up. In a dissertation by Stephanie J. Fowler, which studied high school juniors and seniors, we see exactly what happens when students are taught to heavily annotate poetry. By breaking down the text, finding those structural mechanics, and wrestling with the themes, students didn't just learn about poems. Through practice, collaborative opportunities, and reflection, these students showed massive growth in self-efficacy. Active annotation literally built their cognitive resilience and increased their confidence in their own critical thinking skills. They learned they could push the boulder. Finally, section 6, crossing cultures through stories and the global reward. So we've gone from the microscopic mechanics of a single poem to the mental grit required to understand it. Now let's zoom all the way out to the macro level. What is the ultimate reward for all this hard analytical work? It's global connection. This brings us to a really vital concept, intercultural communication competence, or ICC. Researchers Dan Lee and Li Yuan explore how we can effectively communicate across entirely different cultural backgrounds. And they found that one of the most powerful tools for building this competence isn't just a textbook, it's the deep reading and sharing of stories. Li and Yuan researched the practice of college students telling traditional Chinese stories in English. By deeply analyzing and then sharing rich texts, like the story of the Monkey King, which reflects courage and wisdom, or the legend of the White Snake, which explores complex morality and fate, students do so much more than just expand their vocabulary. They're actually equipped to empathetically understand diverse ways of thinking. Sharing the deep mechanics of these stories breaks down cultural barriers and cultivates a profound, global cross-cultural awareness. It just proves that a story, when truly understood, can bridge continents. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. From a single missing comma in a snowy New England woods to the ancient legends of the Monkey King, reading is never just about staring at ink on a page. It is an active, deeply empathetic exercise. The next time you encounter a story, ask yourself, are you just reading the words, or are you joining the conversation? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and keep looking for the deeper meaning.